The Reverend Jesse Jackson has passed away at the age of 84. Like I said, a lot of people who knew him and protested right alongside of him have been remembering today. One of those people who recently had been working very closely with the Reverend Jesse Jackson is Greg Palast. A lot of the most recent documentary film that Greg Palast did had a couple of showings through Rainbow Push. And Greg joins us now to share his thoughts. Hello, Greg.
Hey, Joan. Glad to be with you on this day of the Reverend's transition, which he would not want us to mourn, but celebrate. And, this is a guy I knew when I lived in Chicago 9 years, and he and I met 50 years ago, almost the day, and that's when we started working together. And
wow.
He was always calling me young man, even when he called me at 71, and we never stopped. I mean, if it weren't for Jesse Jackson, I would have never made it back home from England to America. And Reverend, those who know him don't never call him Jesse, even his family and close friends, we all called him Reverend. Reverend, I'll never forget, called me when I was in Europe working on my last film about vote suppression. And he calls me up. It must have been 5 in the morning. Now, by 2 p.m., he couldn't talk, but at 5 in the morning Chicago time, he was on it, and he was still a warrior. He calls me up. He says, young man, and I'm 71. When he called, young man, you've got to come to Rainbow Push during Democratic Convention. Show your film, Vigilantes, about the latest trickery and vote suppression. I said, Reverend, I'm in Europe. He said, well, get on a plane. I said, well, Reverend, the film ain't quite done. He says, well, finish the film and get on a plane. He never asked. He never asked me to come to Chicago. He always told me. It was always command performance. And I showed up and previewed my last film there, and he watched it. It must have been his 4th time watching my film. And he was in his wheelchair, and they were trying to drag him out, and he kept slamming the wheelchair. I'm not moving. And that I'll never forget. He was in his wheelchair, and he insisted on holding my poster of mine and standing with me for a photo. And he's the only man other than my dad I've ever kissed, and I kissed him on the head because I knew it was goodbye. Oh. And, he was just such a friend. And I can't tell you how much we wrote a comic book together, believe it or not, called Steal Back Your Vote. And even when he was in his wheelchair and couldn't talk for half the day, we wrote an article just last year together on vote suppression. And I'll never forget, he was so demanding. He told me, get here to Chicago. So I showed up, and Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren were there, and he forced Bernie Sanders to say, let's watch this. And we went after this vote suppression trickery called Crosscheck. And he made everyone watch the film. And he told Bernie Sanders, you got to work with me and Greg on this. And we defeated this massive vote suppression technique. It was only because he wouldn't stop. And, even to the very end, and even with that kind of kiss goodbye, it lasted more than another year just because he would not give up. And, and that's a challenge to us. That's a challenge to us. A guy who just would not stop, would not give up. I was just saying, one of my people said, you should say something like he was a giant. Well, he wasn't a giant to me, to be honest. He was a friend. Yeah. And something more important. Reverend and I both grew up poor. And we are not giants. He is not. I'm going to tell you, he wasn't a giant. He was an ordinary guy who just said, I have a personal obligation. And he's challenging you. You don't have to be a giant. You don't have to be something special. You don't have to have his gift of speech. You don't have to have any of those things. It's your responsibility. Just take action. And we like to lie and I say he was something special. He would say the opposite. We're all something special, and none of you have excuses. I did what I did, he would say, and, go ahead, get to work. Everyone has something they can do. So that's, and in any 50-year friendship, we had some tense times, I want to tell you. We disagreed on a lot of stuff. But, we all knew why we were there and working together.
Yeah. You didn't necessarily agree 100%, but you were both moving in the same direction toward the same goal.
And he was he just promoted, he just worked so hard bringing me back to America and promoting my concepts and ideas. And we wrote a lot of stuff together. Like I say, a comic book, which was the #1 best-selling adult graphic comic book of all time, called Seal Back Your Vote. But he was just, it was a question of commitment. How do we reach the people? How do we reach people? And there's no excuse. And also, don't forget something really important. He was a man committed to nonviolence, like his mentor, Dr. King. And that's really important. He really was uncomfortable with a lot of arrogance and violent talk, and very concerned about culture in his community. Are we respecting women? Are we respecting each other? He gave a lot. I didn't even agree with him on a lot of it. He blamed a lot of things on some failures within the black family communities, and said we have to we can't let our culture be destroyed by the way they've tried to destroy our culture. And at first I didn't agree with him, but now I understand a lot of his points now as I get older and more mature. So, but, like I said, we just, he was just so kind and helpful. Well, I could say to me, but it was about the work. And if it weren't for him, there are millions and millions and millions of people who could not, literally millions of people who could not vote today. And I remember him beating up John Kerry, who listened to Greg Palast. Why did you concede the election? He was he never stopped, and he didn't care who the heck he was talking to. It could be Kerry or Obama or anyone. He was tough. He never said, would you, listen to this? Would you agree with us? He would demand. He was constantly demanding that people do their maximum, no excuses. And, it's okay. I'm sorry. I'm going on and on. It's very personal. That's all.
Yes.
It's very personal. 50 years, 50 years.
And I thank you so much for sharing what is obviously a very emotional day with us. Greg, thank you so much for the call. That's Greg Palast. You know him as a warrior against voter suppression. He was also on that same battlefront with the Reverend Jesse Jackson.